So let's talk about the process of strategic planning. We know why we do it, or at least have a basic understanding of why we do intentional strategic planning. We kind of know what it is. We'll get into some explicit detail as we go through this course as to what exactly strategic planning is in terms of content and process and structures. But what is the linear progression of this if we accept the waterfall method of strategic planning? And it's really three phases, and let's take a look at that now. Phase one is the foundational work. It's input and analysis. It's determining the vision, the mission, the values, the ends. And then phase two is really the plan development. Okay, if we accept what we've developed in phase one, and we look at how are we going to make these ends a reality, and ends are really outcomes. That's what we're looking for. It's kind of at the end of the day or at the end of the time period, what are we looking for to be our ideal reality? So phase two is taking that and saying, okay, how do we have definable goals, measurements towards those goals, a plan to meet the measurements to the goals, and a governance structure, an operational structure that takes into account our assets and kind of where we're trying to get. And that is the plan that is most often used. Many people forget phase one or skip phase one or make light work of it, and many people don't even bother doing phase three, the implementation part, and they just do phase two, which is why a lot of them collect dust. And phase three is how do we implement that? Okay, so we have our plan, we have goals, we have measurements to measure our progress against those goals, and how are we going to make those things happen? It involves developing strategic partnerships, both within and beyond our communities. It involves integrating this plan into our communications plan, our fundraising and development plan. It involves making sure that we're monitoring and managing our progress. It does no good to have these goals and measurements put in place, but never have a process for checking those. Who's responsible for getting those? Who's responsible for reporting them? To whom do they report? What happens when we make them? What happens when we fail to meet our benchmarks? Those are all things that are tremendously important to define, both in terms of achieving our goals, but also creating the organizational culture that allows us to make progress and fail sometimes and gain from that, as opposed to saying, okay, they failed and doing a couple things that commonly happen, which is making an excuse for it and not bothering to make any adjustments or shaming people for not making their goal. So we'll talk about that when we get towards phase three, but monitoring and managing is tremendously important. And then revisit and revise. This is an ongoing process. It's not something that we do once and then set aside for 10, 20 years. It's something that needs to be done on a regular basis. If we pull back up that graphic from our last session, the roller coaster of change, the roller coaster is in reality not just one dip, bottom out, and then come back up. It's over and over. Roller coasters are generally not, you get in the roller coaster and you go down a hill and up a hill and stop. It's a cycle. It's up and down and up and down and up and down. And as we discussed before, that's going to happen whether we control it or not. So the idea is to create a plan that can be revisited and revised as necessary without losing sight of the overall core foundational components.